Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Billable Time. My name is Mo Hussain, and this is a podcast where I speak to legal professionals across the board about their legal journeys and different takeaways they would kind of suggest for up-and-coming legal professionals like myself and different valuable insights that they have. In this episode, I had the distinct pleasure of speaking with Mitch Frazer, who is the managing partner of the Toronto office of Mintz LLP, and he shared a lot of valuable advice on his journey in the legal profession, different things he's learned throughout the years, and different suggestions he'd have not only for law students like myself, but lawyers in the profession right now. So thank you so much to Mitch for taking the time, and I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy this episode. Today's episode is a very, very special one. It is the first remote episode that I've done, but for certainly a noteworthy guest. I'm here with Mitch Frazer, who is the managing partner of Mintz in the Toronto office. Mitch has been an incredibly seasoned attorney, well recognized within his field and his industry, and has been I'm really, really fortunate to have him take some time to sort of share more about his journey and sort of what it's like being in the profession. So, Mitch, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Mo. Great to be here today, and congratulations on the work that you've been doing. It's amazing. You're spreading the word. You're promoting, the education of law for a number of people who, don't have a firsthand view like you do. So, thank you for all the work that you do. It's greatly
Thank you very
appreciated.
much. Thank you. The first question I ask everybody, and forgive me if this is extremely simple, but what is it like being you? What is it
What is
like
it
being
like
Mitch?
being you? I don't know any other way. So, what is it like maybe? Look, I always feel very fortunate. I'm the first person in my family to go to university, first male to graduate from high school. And I grew up always wanting to either do something in education or being a lawyer. Those were always, teacher or lawyer were always the things that I got excited about, and I've been able to have a career which has got me heavily involved in both. So for that, I'm very grateful. So succinct answer, it's pretty good being me. Like lots of every day is something different. I get to meet lots of different people, deal with a lot of issues, and I'm always learning. Get to be very intellectually curious and be part of a lot of great discussions with clients or things with some of the other not-for-profits I'm involved with.
Most definitely. And so sort of taking back the clock a little bit in terms of your journey, what sort of,
Yeah,
being someone that is the first on numerous, I guess, instances to do this in your family is an
yeah.
extremely commendable thing. But with that, one thing I've learned in law school is precedent. And in your case, there wasn't necessarily too much of a precedent in this journey. What kind of inspired you to pursue this path, even though there wasn't really a blueprint to follow?
I got to be honest, it's pretty basic. If there's one thing I've always loved to do, it's read. And I always thought, the jobs that you got to read and looked really interesting, from on television, because it was obviously social media, didn't exist in any sort of current form at the point in time. So TV was a big influence. Those looked like interesting jobs. And I never had really, before I went to law school, I'd never really met a lawyer. I know it sounds funny to say, but, it looked like something that was challenging. I knew I saw a lot of people who had been successful, had been to law school, whether it's politicians or lawyers or people who are involved in lots of current issues. And so it'd been a goal, I think, since really high school if to be a lawyer or to be involved in the legal profession in some way, I thought would be a way to continue to learn and to grow.
Wow. Now for sure. That's that, it's certainly unique to hear someone who actually wanted to be a lawyer. I think a lot of times some people get into undergrad degrees and go,
Oh,
well,
and I would say a lot of people, yeah. Law is, a path that many people take because they're not sure, what to do. You talked about precedent before. One of the advantages that I've had, I did not have a precedent, so I didn't have someone saying, "Well, you have to work this hard," or "This is what you like and this is what you won't like." I really got to experience it and didn't have any restrictions. always had part-time jobs. I know this may sound funny, but it was like I was, I delivered newspapers. I worked at Canadian Tire. Law school. I worked in the law library. I
Wow.
paid for my own education, and so, it really mattered to me because I had to work to pay for it. But I also
Mhm.
didn't have anyone telling me about any of the negatives, and not like there are a ton of negatives in law, but it is a sweat equity profession. Like, it is
Mhm.
what you put into it is what you get out of it, and it's not for everybody. But if you're someone who's intellectually curious, who's passionate about learning, who has an open mind, who enjoys being an advisor, because we're not operational in many ways. In my dual role now of managing partner and practicing law, I have a much more of a different perspective than I would have even a few years ago before I started this office. And I enjoy it. There's really interesting things, with law, in different aspects. There's different areas of law that, are really, I wouldn't say invented, but developed, at various different times. And there really is something for everybody. But for the most part, you have to put a lot of effort in, because it's not something where, oh, I've built up this and now I could, ride on the coattails. It's
100%.
you put in, what you get out, but it is incredibly rewarding and, for the most part, very intellectually stimulating.
Most definitely. And that sweat equity part is something that is talked about a lot in the legal profession. It's something that's articulated about. But like you said, not only is this profession, if someone wants to make money, going to an MBA might be one route to
Well,
do it.
there are many
There's
routes to
so
make
many
money.
ways, right? But
There are
it's
many routes.
the it's like obviously that some people look at it from a financial perspective, but the intellectual exercise of
Yeah.
analyzing the law of all that is certainly incredibly valuable. Just before we go into this discussion, did you have a favorite book by any chance that kind of that ignited this, or was like this passion, or was it?
No, there wasn't like a legal book. I had a bunch of favorite books.
Yeah,
I would say, The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas, something I read in
there you
high
go.
school, like those
That's a
pirate
classic.
related things. But no, there wasn't a law book. I think what was very interesting about the law was, around the time where I was just entering my teens, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in the early '80s was introduced,
Wow.
and it was very interesting because you're like, well, don't we have laws that protect us all? And new law was being developed as a result of this. And that got I would say, my curiosity. And then, lawyers, seem to be in important, roles. And when you don't know any different, it was an area I would say, aspire to. And I have to say, it is a profession that has changed my life, has allowed me to give back in numerous circumstances. One of my volunteer roles, is, I chair a hospital board. I've been
Wow.
involved with a school board, chaired a school board. I am chancellor of Ontario Tech University in Oshawa. All of these things result of my decision, to become a lawyer. It's the basis for much of the good that has happened in my life. You know, I won't deny, like, I work incredibly hard. I'm proud of what, I've, been able to achieve, but I've been able to achieve that with lots of other great people. The thing about
100%.
law is, you can either practice on your own. You can be, the true definition of sole practitioner, or you can be part of a firm or a company or an organization or a social enterprise. Lots of different areas, in which you could, you take this degree into the profession. And that's why I say to people, like, if you don't know what to do, it is a good place to go. It's not it's a big financial commitment, and it's a big time to go through law school for 3 years, but it'll lead to many different paths.
Most definitely. Yeah. And coming from a journalism background, I kind of walked in a little bit feeling like, man, I have this safe space from working in communications, working in sports, entertainment, and media. And I'll say that for me, I couldn't imagine not being in this position only because of just the intellectual exercise for sure. And so going into, I guess, where you were in terms of in law school and whatnot, talk to me about what kind of student you were and what sort of helped you most throughout that process and kind of if you were a law student right now, what would you kind of replicate from your experience, or what would you incorporate now that you kind of know about a lot more about the profession?
Yeah, I think second year was a lot easier for me. First year was just learning how to think. I mean, it is the biggest change. Like from going from high school to university is sort of one step, but you're then going to a, a program, a law school program where there's obviously the top people in the undergrad programs who get into it. So you're then amongst a number of intellectually curious people, people who've typically done well in their undergrad, and also it reframes how you think. Law school teaches you, for the most part, how to identify issues. So how to issue spot, how to learn. The practice of law teaches you how to solve them. But if you can't identify them, obviously you can't solve them. And so there's a lot of rigorous thinking. And especially in first year, you're talking amongst your colleagues, you're all trying to learn things, you're all trying to look at is what's the principle, what's the ratio here, how is this? Why did this judge talk about a cricket field?
Yeah.
Who ate the cabin boy? There's
Yeah.
certain basic things about that you're learning. And I think for me, it really settled in year two. Year one, was hard. Not in an undergrad way where there's social change because you're moving out of, say, your home with your family, to a broader organization. In fact, it's different. It actually takes you from a large, usually undergrad program to a much smaller
Condense. Yeah.
entities.
Yeah.
But you have to reframe how you think.
Mm.
I would say the greatest gift that law school gave me was how to think efficiently about a problem.
Wow.
And it's helped me in everything that I've done. I look at things differently because I went to law school, and I wish there was some program that we could send the majority of people not to do law school, but to do the first year of law school and learn how to critically think, how to identify issues, and how to I would say grow from that experience. So, what I would say, what did I learn? I learned how to think. What would I advise people to do? Um, Slow down, appreciate the moment, not be nervous, as we all are or most people are in 1L. Like, should I be here? What should I be doing? You're
Yeah.
not trying to find the answers right away. Like law is a journey. It's the old saying, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so I would take courses that you like, but also I would look at courses that challenge you. I think if you want to go into business law, the one unsung hero course is tax. You really have to understand tax drives most business activities. And if you want to be a litigator, take admin law. Just understand the basic principles behind how administrative law works. Those are the two, courses that I don't think that if they're, I mean, most schools are now mandatory, but if they're not, I really think that you need to take those two courses to actually have a really good perspective when you start to practice, whether you're a sole practitioner, whether you're a small firm, mid-sized firm, big firm, those two courses help drive a lot.
Most definitely. And all those things you're talking about in terms of first year are discussions that are definitely being had and things that obviously I'm assuming every first year law student feels with that. And building on that sort of thing, you've probably seen a lot of law students come in and out in your experience
A
and
lot,
whatnot.
a
What
lot,
would
yeah.
you kind of say is and whether it might have been just those kind of misconceptions of time and the journey element, but what would you say is the biggest mistake or misconceptions you find law students often have where you go, you're worrying about the wrong thing, or this is a little, you're kind of approaching this the wrong way. What would you say is that common misconception you find among whether it's first years or even just law students in general?
I think law students are trying to find the answer, the meaning of life right away. And I would say that there's a process, and you'll find this with anything in law. It's not always the end result, but it's the process that's the key to get you where you need to go. And people come in and they think they have to pick the right firm, the right area. You're going to learn. Your what you want to do, evolves. Pick. I would say, and I don't have a preference on size. I've worked. I've articled at a mid-sized firm. I'm now at a mid-sized firm that's growing. I've been in a large firm. Find people who you connect with during the search process, that you feel will give you opportunity, because especially as a junior lawyer or student, you want broad exposure to things because you're not actually sure what you want to do. Even if you think you're sure, you're not, because you're always going to learn. I wanted to be a great constitutional lawyer, and you realize there's only a few constitutional cases, major constitutional cases here. Then ended up being a pension lawyer. I mean, I didn't even know that existed when I went to law school.
Wow.
And the dean of our law school taught that course. I was a big fan of hers. Am a big fan of hers. She went on to do some great things at the bench and eventually the Court of Appeal. But that's what got me interested, and I read about it. And pensions has tax, trust. It's got some corporate, some litigation aspects. It allowed me to do a lot of different things to promote an important social cause, and that is where I ended up. Mainly because it checked off a lot of intellectually curious but socially good do-gooding boxes that I was able to tie together.
For sure. And that's definitely a valuable thing that I've even heard. I walked in thinking I'm going to be the biggest sports and entertainment lawyer of all time. And then it switched to wanting to do litigation, and then it switched to do transactional. And it's kind of, to me, it's kind of all over the place. And like you said, the biggest thing that's valuable is the idea of just working on good things and working with great people for sure. And then so kind of just transitioning into that piece of being a lawyer, what was it like in those early days, sort of to coming up? And in terms of standing out as a practicing attorney, a lot of people get into the field either whether it's experience, a whole bunch of things, whether it's lack of a work ethic or even burnout or a whole bunch of different factors that prevent them from ascending to that level. What do you find helped you most in terms of career advancement and something that made you stand out from, let's say, some of your peers?
I would say one, hard work. I mean, that's sort of table stakes. Two, getting a general understanding of all the aspects of the work you're given. I would say most students and junior associates, when you give them the work, they do the work. The ones who are eventually successful long term that become partners start to think not as an employee but an owner, which is really what a partner is. And they'll learn all aspects of the business. So, to keep it, at a base level here, what I would do is if you gave me some documents to review about a company, I would Google that company and I'd be like, oh, this is what the company makes, and this is how that fits into what I'm doing. So I always try to figure out what the business aspect, was, and why am I doing what I'm doing. Like I found it took extra time I obviously couldn't bill, and that was time that was taken away from maybe being at a pub or something like that. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it helped me move ahead because I was able to learn more about the business. And then when lawyers who are more senior to me would ask me stuff, I would be able to say, oh, I did this. Here's how it relates to, the project itself. And maybe we should also think about this. Because I think what you get early on in your career is someone gave me a task, I did that task. For the most part, most people could do that. How do you create extra value? That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to become, not just a lawyer, but a strategic advisor to whatever client, you're doing work for. And the client comes in different phases. If you're a student, it's a junior lawyer. If you're a junior lawyer, it's a mid-level lawyer. If the mid-level lawyer client is often a senior associate or partner, know your client. It's not just a law society rule. It's an actual practical
Yeah.
reality. Like, who are you trying to make look good? We all have somebody. Yeah.
No, no, no. That's incredibly valuable, and that piece of like going the extra mile, particularly in terms of researching. I think a lot of times people get caught up in the weeds in terms of just looking at a particular case and all that and whatnot for sure. And then so just as a sort of last thing I'll ask in terms of just the practice of you as a lawyer per se, building on what you'd mentioned before for lawyers coming up in 2025, what would you say are the biggest pieces of advice you would kind of mention to anybody looking to stand out in that context, given where we are now?
Yeah, try to get ahead of whatever the trends are. And the advantage I think the students have is at this age, you've all grown up using technology in a way that people twice your age haven't. We've
Mhm.
all had to learn it sort of mid-career. You're learning that now. So understand how to use AI, understand how to use technology, understand how to use things that make them practice more efficient. if you have other skills, like you're talking about, being a journalist, questions to ask that some lawyers wouldn't ask. So your mind would be very well suited, in my view, to, working in litigation because you're trying to ask the questions to which the other side may not answer, but you have to put them, you have to find the questions and you have to develop the questions in order to get the answers. And your curious mind and your journalist background would give
Yeah.
you an edge in that field. Now, it probably would give you an edge anywhere, but if you're saying to me like, "Wow, today, what would be good at?" And so you have to figure out where you start. And this where you start is not where necessarily you can end your journey. I started off, as a corporate associate, and then eventually migrated over to to pensions, because there were things I liked about corporate, but there were more things I liked in the pension space, that
Absolutely.
would keep me challenged for a very long period of time.
For sure. Yeah, that's definitely a valuable way to look at it. I appreciate the compliment on the end in terms of coming from a journalism background, trying to find my best parallels the best I can. So I only have a couple more questions for you in terms of that. Obviously, don't want to take too much of your valuable time, but you mentioned earlier
Appreciate
sort of the hierarchy of like sort of being an associate, law student, partner, senior associate, partner. You've kind of reached the point where it's like you're the partner's partner, if that makes sense. So kind of working as a manager's partner. What
No,
what
I'm
is
actually at the bottom of the totem pole now because I now I actually work for everybody. So
Oh, yeah.
I always say to people when they come into a law firm, and I say my previous law firm, started hiring people in the 2L. We start here in 1L, but I used to joke and there was some seriousness. Is like the power comes with the two that you get hired as a 2L, and most firms and large firms will offer you hire back, almost automatically for articling unless something, yeah, unfortunate
Yeah.
occurs. And so while you're a 2L and while this offer is made to you, before you make that decision, you're at the peak of your power. There's some humor to that, but there's some reality.
Yeah.
And then there's a hierarchy, and then I get to my stage. Like I'm a people person. I
Yeah, for
value
sure.
everybody who works here. I've fortunate to have spent my first 2 years at a wonderful firm called Osler's, and 20
100%.
years
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah. Great
an
firm.
excellent firm called Tories.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yep.
now, last 2 years at a wonderful, wonderful organization called Mintz.
Yes.
And I started at Osler's, and a few weeks before me started this amazing human being called Stacy McBride. And Stacy is the only assistant I've had my entire career,
Wow.
through three firms. And so I half-heartedly joke, but I'm mainly serious. I think she's my boss. And I've had
Most
this
definitely.
awesome relationship where we've had a great partnership, and then there are associates that who work with me now who I taught in university. There are others who I worked with when I was a partner at my previous firm and came with. There are assistants who I've worked with. Like, you know, I always try to wherever
Holistic
I
approach, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, look, I've never looked at hierarchy. I don't think it works. I think, look, different people get paid different things for doing different jobs. But if you're going to have a successful law firm, you need everyone doing their part. I hate to be hokey, but football coach Bill Belichick always says, "Do your job." And if everyone does
100%.
their job, you're going to have a
Everything's
successful
flowing smooth.
organization, whether it be law or anything else.
For sure. I so appreciate the humility and it comes off with the way you kind of
No,
describe your
I
job.
hope to stand by because that's how I feel. Like I feel very fortunate to be doing what I'm doing. In my mind, you say what motivates me.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm an articling student. Like I will never not be an articling student. Like I remember showing up to article at a now defunct firm called Goodman and Carr, and I
Yeah.
came off the subway, and everyone is walking up these escalator stairs, and it was like, and on that sound, okay, where I'm like, oh my God, like I went to the office that day. I went to reception, and they're like, here's an office, and I'm walking through, and I didn't know anybody. Um, and then I get to my office, and I paired up with my law school classmate, coincidentally, and now good friend, Samir Khan. And we're in this office, and he shows up. I think I was there for like 10 minutes before him, and then he showed up, and our names are on the door, and we're like, now what do we do? Okay. And so, we all start off somewhere, and it's very motivating to me because I think, I hope that it allows me to relate to all the different jobs. Like,
Most definitely.
I've been an assistant, I've worked in offices, I've worked on construction sites, I've worked, in public relations. Um, Everyone has a tough job, and
100%.
everyone needs to do their job in order for you to do their job. So, it is interesting when you say you're managing, but
And
there's
I was gonna
always
say, yeah.
there's always someone you report to. Like even if you're a sole practitioner, there's a client. Like there's
Yes, yes.
always a boss,
Yeah.
and so there's never a I'm at the top. And
100%.
if
Yeah,
and if you come to the top, you should retire because there's nothing else to do. But
yeah.
I don't know what the top would be. So
No, no, no.
either Mo, what I want you to do in your segments from now on is tell me where the top is so I can strive for that. I don't know where that is
Yeah,
yet,
yeah,
but
yeah. I
if you
meant it.
find
I
out, you'll
meant
let
it.
me know.
I just meant it from a standpoint of I was trying to illustrate
What do you
what
do
kind of
now?
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. What was kind of, I would have just loved to know the difference between what it's like in terms of just being a job, from a job perspective, of the perspective of being at, let's just call it a position or a managing partner, I guess, in
Yeah,
that sense, even though it's a collaborative effort, most
yeah.
definitely. And it's,
I think yeah, it's a
yeah.
consent. Look, I think most managing partners, I said I've only been doing this for 2 years,
Mhm.
but I've talked to a number of others, and I think I would say like you try to manage the best you can by consensus. A law firm, for the most part, is not like a corporation where the VP is reporting into the senior VP is reporting into the whatever position to the CEO. Like there's partners, and then there are, and different categories of partners. So equity partners who own, and then there are other people who, are theoretically, employees, even though I feel everyone is an owner of the business that we're in now. And then, you manage everybody and you try to create, consensus, and you never have, you know, unanimity. I don't think you will have perfect unanimity, but I think you have, general agreement on most things. And a successful law firm can't be one person dictating, what, the organization should be doing. It's got to be collaborative, and it's got to be consensus oriented, and it has to focus on two things. It has to focus, number one, in my view, on culture. You have the old Peter Drucker line, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And when I first heard that, I thought it's very hokey, but the reality of that is true. And that there has to be some level of financial success. And whatever that looks like will be different for every organization. But it is at a certain size. A law firm is a business, and so people need to get paid, but it's also a profession. So you're balancing those interests, the interest of the rule of law, with making sure that you're employing X number of people. Like I count today, we're 35 lawyers, another 17, professionals who work here, non lawyers who work here as well. So it's over 50 families that are enterprise in this one office alone employees. I take that incredibly seriously. I'm proud to be associated with all of them, but I have to take their economic interest and the
100%.
fact
Yeah,
that
yeah.
they're, as well. So you're balancing, culture, the profession of law, and the business of law, to make, your organization work. So it's a fascinating, I wouldn't say challenge, but I'd say it's an adventure, and
Dynamic,
I
yeah.
feel,
Most definitely.
and I feel very lucky. Like if you just said to, 17, 18-year-old me that I'd be get to doing this with the people I'm doing it with the clients we have, I'd be like, yeah, what fantasy, are you telling me about? So, I wake up every day, very grateful for the people I work with, the people who provide me the work, and all the people that I'm fortunate enough to be able to help. So
100%. And I'm sure most people feel the same way with an incredible person like you, kind of with the humility and
really good for
perspective
my
that you have as
ego. You're
well.
going to get a lot. Yeah. So thank you, Mark. I appreciate that.
It's incredible. I'm sure a lot of people would give that credit to you as well. The final question I think I'll ask you, and something I'm looking forward to asking most guests is looking forward into the future. You know, sort of reading about Mintz, sort of the expansion to Toronto, a lot of big things coming out of the firm and specifically. But even for your career, is there anything? What is one thing you are looking forward to in the future?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things. I'm not that old. Oh, I'm kidding. Do you mean with the profession, or do you mean
Or
in
even
life, or do
the
you,
first thing that comes to your mind in terms of looking forward to having accomplished all of this in your career, and then sort of whether it's nonprofits or even just, you know, the work we've done with clients now.
yeah. I mean, I would say I'm very, fortunate where I am. I still have a lot of runway, but I've been really lucky to do a lot of interesting things at, perhaps a more youthful age. I love helping people. Like it's what it's look, a lot of people look at this and say, oh, that's so hokey and that's not real. But I love helping people. And the coolest thing about being a lawyer or being a board member, or being a mentor is I'm an advisor. It's what I am, it's what I love to do. And as long as I can find some role where I can create value in the lives of others, then I will be around helping, as many people as I can. It's a good problem to have, but I think if you talk to the people who know me well, whether people I work with or friends, I think it makes me happy. It's, changing lives. Like every morning I used to get out of bed and I used to feel like every day the motto was, let's make a difference. And I'd say ever since the pandemic happened, my motto is let's change some lives.
Wow.
Let's do some things and help people and find different ways to give back. So many people have helped me get where I am, today, including my, wonderful family, my friends, my colleagues who I work with. So I feel a huge debt to all those people, and there's no way I can pay them back. There's nothing I can do that would be good enough, and so I just try every day to pay it forward.
That's incredible. That's probably the best way to probably end this off. And I'm sure people are just as appreciative of you as you are of them. But Mitch, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Mark, for the opportunity, and keep up the great work. And very proud of all things that you've been doing. You're, at such a young level, making such a big difference, on the future of legal education. So looking forward to following your career with interest, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much, Mitch. Well, thank you so much again to Mitch for taking the time. I'm sure you guys had a lot of different valuable takeaways just learning from someone as esteemed as him within the legal journey, and sort of just the humility he had in not only his contributions to the legal profession, but his approach to the law. So thank you again to Mitch for taking the time. And there's more interviews to come, so make sure to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, share this interview across the board with anyone who you think would get a lot of value from it. But for now, and for Billable Time, I'm Mo Hussain in Toronto.